So you should have this note sheet if you want to get out your urbanization note sheet and take notes on that. If you don't have it, that's okay. A piece of paper is just fine. But we're going to talk about what are the impacts of urbanization. So obviously yesterday we talked about how human population is growing very rapidly, and that depends on the amount of resources that we have available, like food, water, space, land. But let's talk about what do we mean by urban. So urban just means that it's an area with at least 5,000 people per square mile. So if you look at Hendersonville, in 2016 we were at about 13,800 people at 6 square miles. So our population density, we would do that 13,840 and we divide it by that 6 square miles. And so our population density would be 2,306 people per square mile. So Hendersonville is not quite considered urban. Our county is even less urban, which makes sense. We've got a lot of farming here, so a lot of land with fewer people. So our county density is about 209 people per square mile. Even Asheville in 2016 we were at about 89,000 people at 45 square miles. So if you break that down and divide it, our population density of Asheville is about 1,900. So even Asheville isn't considered urban. So let's talk about where people live. Urban places make up 3% of our land. Okay, so think about 3% of the land on Earth is urban. 81% of the population in the United States lives in an urban location. Think about that. 81% of the population on 3% of the land. So that's telling you that these are very, very densely populated cities. If only 3% of the land has 81% of the population, people are in very close proximity. So some examples of densely populated cities: New York City, absolutely. That's 27,000 people per square mile. It's definitely urban. Not a lot of space per person. Paris is another one. It's even higher, 55,000 people per square mile. That's insane, guys. India, Delhi, India, 66,000. The Philippines, 107,000 people per square mile. That's insane. So let's look at the effects of that. We end up with lots of infrastructure, lots of buildings, lots of just lots of stuff very close together. Okay, and this can have lots of different effects on our environment. So if you look at these places, obviously lots of stuff in a small amount of space, and the reason is we can industrialize, right? So if we're closer together, we don't need as many farmers. We can ship food places easily. Transportation is easier. We can have all the jobs in one place. But what's the problem with that? We end up with urban crisis. So if you look at those pictures that I just showed you, a lot of them were slums. Okay, not very clean, not very healthy places for people to live. We also end up with suburban sprawl. So sprawl just means that it's spread out. A lot of people can't afford to live in the cities, but like we said earlier, all the jobs are in the cities. So this creates a car culture. People live outside of the city and commute every single day, which is going to eventually destroy cities. So there's some pictures of slums. You can see how that would not really be a healthy way to live. We also end up with a lot of emissions. So you can see kind of that hazy smog in the air there. It's not healthy. It's very relevant right now with what we're dealing with as far as the pandemic. The closer people live together, the easier it is to spread disease, all kinds of stuff. So what can we do? The first thing we can do is land use planning. So plan out a city. Make sure that we have the transit.
Could I have a custodian to the front office with a hand truck, please?
So we've got to plan out our city, make sure there's enough space and everything that we need. So are there enough grocery stores per unit of land, or are there grocery stores close to everyone? Are there schools close to everyone? And then is there a way to get around? So mass transit, if you think about New York City, not a lot of people drive cars. That would be a lot more space taken up by cars. So they use the subway, they use trains, they use buses, all ways to maximize that space. And then it's also important that we have open spaces. We need parks and stuff to avoid creating heat islands. So if you look at this map right here, you can see in Charlotte, so this is a map of Charlotte, we need to incorporate green space, or else we're going to end up with something we call heat islands. And I'll show you that in just a second. So concrete and asphalt are two materials that heat up very, very quickly. So cities can become heat islands with pollution if we have a lot of non-porous surfaces and we don't have a lot of greenery to break that up. So like this would be an example of a green space inside a city. We can end up with a lot of pollution, which is not good. And here's a little graph of that. I think you guys have probably experienced this before. It's usually warmer in the city than it is in a rural area. And that's just because all of that asphalt and all that concrete and all of the pollution absorbs heat and it traps heat. And it's really not good for our environment. We need greenery and trees to fight that and to take in some of those carbon emissions. So I'm going to show you this video. I want you to give me a response to the video. So I want you to write down 3 things in your notes of ways that we can reduce urban heat islands. Just kidding. I will post the video for you in your agenda. So watch the video. It'll be posted in the agenda.